Regular meeting, January 12th. Roll call, Ms. Shuck.
Chairman Dale Massad.
Here.
Vice Chair Bill Colombo.
Here.
Board Member Steve O'Neill.
Here.
Board Member Nancy Britton. Here. Board Member Terrence Rowe.
Here.
City Attorney Joseph Public.
Here.
And City Manager Tom O'Neill.
Here.
Okay, we have approval of council minutes. I was not there. Has anyone read it? Do I have a?
I motion to approve both.
Okay.
Second.
Anyone in the public?
Yeah, we don't usually do the public.
Okay, motion to approve in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And that was both, Tammy.
Yes.
Announcements.
I have none.
Okay. General public. Anyone want to speak on the CRA? Bring it up to council. No one? All right.
Well, I
fine.
do, but I didn't know if you had anybody else. I know we'll get into a few things.
Go ahead.
All right. All right, CRA. I believe we had questions regarding the present total. Did we have, and I know she's looking for some numbers, we had obvious, we have our sheet of expenditures was given us. I know everybody received a copy as well of fund balances through the end of September 2015. The general fund, the CRA, which the unrestricted at that time, fund balance ending about 76,000. That just takes into account that particular time frame, though. I think, is that correct if it's dated through the end of September 15? Does that?
The 76,000 will be the balance of the undesignated reserves if we expend every item that we budgeted in the 15-16 CRA budget, which doesn't happen.
That's for the current year. That
Right.
would end this coming September 30.
Right, where we take in, based on the formula and taking in funds.
But just to clarify what Aaron just said, I want everyone to keep in mind, we budget. A budget is a planning document. Throughout every single year, we are extremely careful with every single expenditure. Everything over $500 and under $10,000 is reviewed by 4 people: the originating department head, the finance director, the assistant city manager, and the city manager. So we only spend every year an average of about 75 to 80% of what we budget during any given fiscal period. So the number that we forecasted takes into consideration everything. If we spend every dime of what's budgeted, which never happens. So we're likely to wind up with considerably more than that, unless we have a hurricane, unless we have another disaster or unforeseen set of circumstances.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I was going to say, might I suggest, the single agenda item we have here is pretty broad. So to get this deep into certain subjects and comments, opening comments is kind of redundant. I think we should, just move on to the agenda. Unless somebody just has some brief comments, that.
Yeah, I just have some brief comments that I think relate to, as we're beginning again in a new year and highlighting some things about the CRA. There have been indications here that I think carry over, and I'll make this brief, Bill. We all been here a long time. I think we're pretty familiar, but.
The agenda is what you're talking about, I believe.
Well, we want to broaden it a little bit. I requested some information. I don't know if the rest of you received this information. I'm not sure, but this is just a breakdown of those actual expenses. When we look into administration, you're going to look into a certain percentage CRA impact in several areas. Now,
Do you have a page number on the bottom, would you? 79?
That's not in the packet.
this wasn't in the packet.
It's
that
in
I-
the
that I
budget
had.
document.
Yeah, Yeah, this is all in the budget document that I have. It's just in a different format. But, you know, regardless of that, I can't help but to say a few things because, you know, early on, as Terry indicated, about looking at these revenue sources and having a workshop. You know, that's fine and dandy. We've talked about the streetlights, we've talked about the trash pickup, and we've talked about several other things that seem to come and go, and nothing's done. I think we are going to cover those items, and I'm sure that we're going to make some progress. But going back to the CRA reinstatement that occurred in '09, that everyone here is familiar with, certainly outlines, and we had an attorney who specialized in this actually work with the city manager at the time to implement this. And, you know.
Is this, this resolution I have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you all received this again because, you know, obviously this was information coming to everybody, I said. And as Terry indicated in looking forward, now, you know, what I think things, you know, people need to know is that, you know, number one, we didn't do, you know, anything that didn't go through a process at the time. And I believe it was Ellen that started that process and worked with this attorney who, again, specialized, and I know everybody's familiar. A few of us, I think, were here at the time. But again, if you look at and total that up, and I'm not saying it is or isn't, but if you total that up, you're looking at 3 mills. All right, you got $244 per mill. Now, I don't know what the figure is now. I think as Tom indicated, and he said before, we're going to wean ourselves off of some of that, and we did based on the utilities. So, you know, again, as we're looking through, you know, and the impact is, you know, obviously less dollars, I'd just like to see us go forth in this CRA to apply, you know, areas where we might be able to improve on things that we've already done. When you talk about, you know, weaning off dollars and those apply, but, you know, rightfully so, several of these positions work on things that are applied to CRA.
Well, I believe you were the first one to ask for our reserve funds.
Mm-hmm.
And I find them shockingly low. And that's the reason I wanted to start talking early about it. I went through this budget and being really generous, the max I could say is we're using 8% of it for the intended purpose. So I think there's a time where we're gonna have to decide, are we a city of 2,600 people living on the taxes that we tax our residents for, or are we gonna continue to use all the red light camera money, use all the CRA money, we have some few grants, or are we gonna operate within, like, your family budget? If you got here, you would probably commit suicide or something. All of the camera, all of the, do you guys have do they have this?
Yes.
CRA budget, page 79, if you just follow with me quickly. Expenditure budget. Everybody there? Okay. All right, page 79. I can't find one thing that would fit into the CRA fund as it was intended. Page 80. Really pretty much the same thing. I don't know of any of that is a lasting redevelopment project. 81. I don't, Tom, what are the contractual services under operating expenditures? What are we contracting for?
They would be miscellaneous services, whether they be planning, legal counsel, engineering, and
Fire department?
no, engineering, if indeed this CRA needed any engineering for a particular project. And go ahead here.
That's actually just the fire chief's salary.
Okay.
It's split up between CRA and general fund, so that's just a portion of it.
And in addition, anything else miscellaneous, if there was additional funding left.
Okay. 82, I cannot find one expenditure that is within the law or the intentions of the law of the CRA.
Well, I think we have to hold there because if you go back to and I'm not saying you're right or wrong, I'm just saying based on the CRA reinstatement of '09 that was done by a leading attorney for those purposes of CRA and had outlined that a note pursuant to this resolution, the city began using RTF revenues for operating expenses both in the GF general fund, the water, the sewer, including funding for personal expenses that were deemed appropriate city CRA redevelopment purposes. Again, this was all laid out in specifics under the guidance of a city manager working with the attorney. So while we would look at a figure as such, I know it's hard to look at that applying to, and maybe Tom would comment on this, he is a city manager, that is why this statement went forward. I'll be frank with you, without those particular dollars, you're not the city of Port Richey anymore, because those particular dollars would be gone. You are not able to run a city without that plan going forward, in my own opinion.
To my knowledge, we have done public records requests. The letter from that attorney is not in the file.
I'm just reading from what everybody received. I mean, not obviously his letter, but obviously pertaining to the CRA amendment dated 2009. You received this as well. It's got your name on it.
I'm saying that we got an opinion letter, and if you remember when last time I was on council, we got an opinion letter I got crucified for that said it can be used for dredging. Now, we have that. We do not have anything that backs this up, and to the best of my knowledge, this is really more of a resolution that allows us, if you look at the back page, 500,000, 500,000, it covers anything we use for. We can buy ice cream cones and we're covered. And I think that was the purpose of this resolution.
Well,
Now-
if you're weaning off, and I'm sure several other council members can contribute to this conversation, if you're weaning off those particulars and that's the direction that you're taking, that's fine. But at any time, and I'll be the first to acknowledge, I'm probably the only one up here who've wanted to vote to increase those taxes for that reason alone. You're about to lose at least in a year or so, maybe longer, related to your traffic, your dollars coming in for CRA or less. You want to talk about staffing numbers and reducing those particular percentages, please be prepared to have at least 3% on your next tax bill added in, because this city would not be at the very generous 5.34, whatever we're at now.
Well,
We would not be there.
We have to go back to the point where the taxes were pushed back to 3.9%. I was on the council at that time. You pushed it. I followed with you on that. That was a bad move in my opinion. Bad, 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 because that's what put us here. That's why, in my opinion, the CRA is why we're utilizing so much of the CRA. We really took a hit because we didn't foresee what was going to happen, because we didn't have a crystal ball. We thought we were doing the right thing in the very beginning, but then shit hit the fan, excuse my French. But
Well,
it did,
economy-wise and
you know.
housing is what you're referring to.
Huh?
then. Economy and housing-wise is what you're referring to,
Everything went
because
crazy.
the
We didn't
formula
know that
was
was gonna
less.
happen.
Right, let's speak one at a time.
We didn't know that was gonna happen. So, then So that really hurt. That really hurt. So now we had to go sneak back up slowly but surely. I mean, and not even, we were, you know, the council never went past the rollback rate. We always stayed with the rollback rate because we didn't want to hurt the citizens. We did everything we could to keep the rates down from coming up from that 4%. And so it took a long time. And what are we at now? 5.6 something or something like that. So
5.46.
so that was an issue there. But there again, the intentions were good when it happened, but we didn't know. We absolutely didn't know that, you know, what was gonna happen in the economy and how the world was gonna change. Of course, if we had a crystal ball, we maybe wouldn't have done that at the time.
Well,
But that has a lot to do with where we are today, I think.
well,
But,
I think if you add up a couple of mills, which Steve is correct, 244,000 is a mill. If we're gonna run this city as we should have, the mills, you can't get, you can only go to 10. That's it. So while we always look for revenues, you're gonna have to look at becoming more efficient with our money and looking, I mean, from my perspective, for instance, IT, $275,000. I don't know much about who's on our attacking us, but I can't imagine that also that we need that much money to do it. If we didn't, if you just imagine in your head, we don't have CRA, which is maybe not too far away. I think this city has to run on the, if you want to raise it a mill, want to raise it to 2 mills, I don't think that's going to make it. You have to cut back somewhere. Any other comments?
I think we're gonna, in order to get off of CRA, we have to cut all services back, all.
I agree. I
mean,
agree. That's
like,
why
you
I
know,
wanted to get started now.
No more trash pickup, no more, you know, and then the citizens will have will be upset about that. You know, the services that we typically are giving it, you know, we have to do away with a lot of them.
What if Pasco County came to us and said, geez, you're using 2%, by my calculation, of the CRA money for intended purposes, and therefore, we're not gonna give you a CRA. Then what do we do?
I can't do that.
Mr., I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it might prove beneficial to recap where the city was, where the city's been, and where the city's headed. I think we're talking here about a policy decision as opposed to a legal decision. What the city did in 2009 was restate its CRA in accordance with the law. What the city did was legal based on the advice of legal counsel at the time that specialized in the CRA, which, as you'll see in the resolution, talks about salaries, talks about other operating expenses, and talks about capital improvements, including dredging. So by restating the CRA, it's legal to do what the city did. Recognizing that the CRA is of a finite nature, my personal opinion is that we should begin to wean ourselves off of that and decrease the reliance. And what we tried to do through the budget process was first look at utilities, because we now have adjusted our utility rates as of October 2013. The utility can stand on its own financial feet, and it was spending a pretty good sum of money out of the CRA to fund utility operations inside and outside the city. We corrected that. So the remainder of the expenses are a policy matter, and you know, you can look at that through the budget process. I'm all for trying to decrease our reliance as much as we possibly can, but I want to emphasize what the city did was legal. What the city did by its resolution was very deliberate and methodical to pay for certain operating expenses that it deemed were for redevelopment purposes at the time. Now, that's a different matter from saying, I don't want to do that anymore. which this council and CRA can say, I don't want to spend this amount of money on salaries. What I would recommend to you is that we have a sheet, and it's in the budget document, that speaks to every single department on how much is spent for salaries, how much is spent for benefits and so forth. And you see part of that, although it's not broken down by line item. The allocations are in the budget document. What I would recommend to you is that we do a study on this and look at revising our allocations in the CRA with the intent of reducing the expenditures for salaries and benefits. And it's to free up more CRA revenue for projects and redevelopment projects. I think that's appropriate. I think we need to begin to wean ourselves off. Another fact that I wanted to make sure everybody knows is that the revenues from the CRA during the last fiscal year, the contribution from the county was $407,073. The contribution from the city general fund was $301,243. So if you just flat out said, we're not going to have any CRA anymore, the city would not lose the $301,000, but it would lose the 407, and which equates to about $1.75 million as opposed to 3 mils. So that's the amount of money that you would need to raise to break even with what we do today, which we don't need to do. We have a CRA, and we need our CRA, and we want to maintain our CRA. But I believe it's in the best interest of the city to work to decrease our reliance. We've talked about other things that I think are a good idea for the city. We need to closely look at our grants and determine whether or not that there's any return on investment for the grant money that we've spent for paint up, fix up, commercial and other residential grants. Those total to quite a sum of money. I have that right here in front of me. And we have to make a decision on whether or not that is still in the best interest of the city. The past 2 years, if you'll recall, we brought you initially a recommended budget with no grant money in it. And we ended up putting money back in it because that was what was deemed appropriate by the council. And so, I just want to clarify so that we don't face any challenge by any outside agency. The city properly restated its CRA based on decisions it made at that time. That was in a different era, keep in mind. A different era where real estate rose in value every single week and you didn't know that anything like what has happened is going to happen. My house, my personal house, is worth 1/3 of what it was in 08 and 07. And the value of the CRA is 1/2 of what it was in 08. So those are factors that you got to deal with, but we're dealing with them too. There's no, in my mind, there's no reason to press a panic button. We've always balanced a budget. We always will balance a budget. If your decision is to cut services or other expenditures, that's of course what we're going to do for you. And so that's just my opinion. I wanted to give you some background on it.
Okay, let's talk about balanced budget.
Yep.
We overspent $25,000 approximately per month last year on our balanced budget.
Could you tell me that again?
According to the figures from our staff, we overspent about $25,000 a month, or $300.
Yes,
$1,000.
we used reserves to balance the CRA budget for last year, and so we spent more than we took in.
Let's see, we used $699,000 from unrestricted funds to balance the 15-16 this year's budget. Do you have that
That's a general fund.
in the general fund?
Yeah.
We took $337 unrestricted funds to balance our budget. We took 75, that's out of the CRA. We took 75,000 out of Penny for Pasco. Utilities stood alone. Stormwater utility fund, 51,000 to balance the budget, and transportation impact fee, 350,000 to balance our budget. This is to balance our budget, and then we still overspent. Oh no, that was the year before.
To clarify, you know, those funds were shown in the budget document, but not spent in the budget document. You know, as I mentioned earlier, we spent about, typically about 75–80% of what we show in the budget document because we're careful with expenditures. You know, personally, I think we need to pay close attention to this. I think we need to look at the services that the city delivers, and the council needs to make a decision on what they want to do and what they don't want to do, and adjust its millage accordingly. If you want to do everything we're doing now, then something's got to give. But we don't have to do everything that we do now.
No, but I think if we start now, we can start
Absolutely.
figuring out every council meeting, where is the fat? Mr. O'Neill?
Well, we have figured out something, but, you know, part of that money is reflective of going back to 2013 and 2014 in relation to the water. You might remember, you were on one of those councils. Through 10 years, we never had any increases. I was part of it too. She was part of it too. He's part of it too. We're all part of it. We're not part of it anymore because we've made those. No, I'm just saying we've made those adjustments. So when you refer to the 699,000 and that unrestricted, you know, there's a lot that goes along with that. There's a lot that goes with spending $1 million on dredging over 10 years and not one channel being done today. But anyway, I'd like to go back to just some simple math that, you know, I think is a positive because, and we're going to have Pete Schatzel here as well. He is the expert. So some of these questions I think that he'll be able to answer as well. I'm just saying if you look back at 13-14 and the water situation we were in, and money's not collected that were deemed uncollectible, those amounted to $400,000.
And
So,
yeah, I'd like to ask Tom, what is our procedure for deeming that water uncollectible?
That was a matter that was undertaken by the city's independent auditor at their insistence. It had remained uncollected for 4 to 5 years, and the city attorney and I discussed this in detail, and we pretty much concluded that an effort to collect that money would be a difficult, if not impossible, endeavor. And that was communicated and discussed over several years with the auditor, and they decided this year, not me, to classify it as an uncollectible debt. However, that does not preclude you from taking legal action to try and collect that debt. We just don't think you'd be successful. So, you know, all of your options are still available to you. That was a very difficult meeting. I ended up, after talking with Councilman Colombo, going back and listening to the tapes of that meeting, and it was very difficult to determine, this was in 2010, but it was very difficult to determine what direction that the city council wanted to proceed with at that time. The rate relief occurred, and there were problems with the notification, so that's what we discussed. And that's a matter that the city, I guess, perhaps would learn an expensive lesson on. You know, be careful with regard to relief, you know, adopt a proper rate structure, do everything by the book and by the statutory requirements. And just because you have a bunch of people that come in and cry foul, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a foul. So anyway, that being said, there's nothing else to really communicate on that. But
Okay, the other problem, I couldn't find that on the audit. I'm sorry, Steve.
Well, and again, I mean, we can debate those numbers, but, part of that cost, if you want to go way back, we can go back to, the days of US Water and charging $48 an hour for the guy to hold a shovel. We've come to a better place. There were some difficult points in getting there, but in the long run, just like we're going to cover stormwater soon, we're in a better place. We had to raise those rates. We had to move along. But, there was going to be some injuries in between. But going back on this, and everybody has this, regarding the community redevelopment, the majority, 23%, as noted on here, expended in the building department. I think we're aware what, what we've had. Unfortunately, we lost an individual in there as well. I'm not sure of our current status, but that will come up. The second, Mayor, you're quite familiar with because you worked on this years ago. This regards the police department. I've asked for some numbers to be forward. Look, I don't want to be viewed as the person against the police. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Nor do I.
But I have brought forward questions regarding the almost $1 million in 10 years that is now expended regarding the public safety budget for Port Richey. We're 500 people less. We're not more. We're
But
2 square miles.
We're about, what, 20% less population, and our police department, I believe, is up about 40%.
I mean, look, these folks do a wonderful job,
I'm
and
not
part of
knocking
having
the
a city
police.
is having your water, having your parks, having your definitely your police. Certainly safety is a key today. All you gotta do is turn on the news and hear bad news. We feel safe with our police, but numbers are numbers. And you remember this going way back. I know there were some analysis done and things were talked about. Now you're looking at the second largest portion of that sector. That's 12%. If we're going to have those conversations, maybe, and you're talking about services, you're going to be bringing things up. I don't think if people are looking at 1.6 and going into 2.5 million, and you've got your dispatch and you've got a lot of other things that are tied in here. I believe that's 100% general funded, so there's no impact to the CRA regarding dispatch. But again, if you're going to wean yourself off of these numbers, for how long? You've already asked the question, how long are we going to even have a CRA? And it's done some very good things in this city. But, overall, these numbers are what they are. We've crossed some borders there with the water. I think, as long as I've been sitting here, or what I have left, I think that, having some of these conversations regarding this weaning off, I think that's where you're taking us.
That's where I'm trying
But
to take
I'm just saying there's a careful step forward because, we're not just talking about a couple of $100,000. We're talking about several $100,000. And we're also talking about impact to the police, impact to building, impact to services in general. And I think everybody here, sitting up here, not only me, understands in having the city of Port Richey. Look, I remember the days of folks asking, what is this word dissolution? And there was a vote. But, if you're going to have a city and going to have services like we have and pay the low taxes that we do, unfortunately now there's some very hard decisions to make, I think, going forward.
And I would suggest possibly a community-wide questionnaire as to what services do you like best, what you like worst, where would you like us to, do you want more taxes? And see, what they want is less taxes and more services.
Yeah.
We know that. Just can't make it work. So, maybe a questionnaire is, more than I do about that, Tom, how to not load the questions.
That's an excellent idea, because what you can do is get your citizens' input. That's commonly done. I believe City of Zephyr Hills did one several years back.
For about at least the last 10 years,
Yeah.
they've been doing them every year.
Yeah.
They call it a citizen satisfaction survey. I can get you a draft of what they've used, and it can be tweaked.
It's a very good idea, and we certainly can implement that. One other brief comment, and then I will cease, is that this should be considered the beginning of your budget review. If you desire, and what I had planned on doing, is we'll do this for every single department. You know, we'll have another time where the police department budget's on, we'll have the fire department, we'll have the public works, we'll have the utilities on. We'll have billing and collection, finance, and you know, give you an opportunity to go over everything and see where the dollars go. And so this would be the beginning. And, you know, like for example, when you're talking about police, there's a part of the CRA that's dedicated toward police funding, but we're not going into real detail on exactly what the police funding goes for.
We only have the chief and one officer under the current CRA. That's not a lot.
No.
But are there other cities that utilize other systems, such as a different tax within their current tax structure that allots? I'm thinking about fire departments, and somebody added a particular tax for that. I don't know if this is some,
Like a fire service district.
like a fire service district,
they
or
did for the
whether or not
waste.
they have a police service district tax or something of that sort.
But
I know
see, we're
building
still
authority
looking
want
at
to comment on
revenue
that, but it's just a
side.
question in general, because I just don't think you can get there if you're talking about our current services and where we're at.
My thought about that is, every time we try to balance this thing, we look at how to get more money rather than how to cut is it necessary, Tom, for $275,000 for IT? Is that something that doesn't have a
Well,
little bit of fat on it?
we certainly should go over that in detail. I don't have anything, you know, in front of me on that, but, you know, what we should do is show you where those dollars go. And of course, it's a different world in municipal government and in the private sector as well. You know, the world runs on IT now. And so, you know, what we need, or what I would recommend to you, is that we methodically go over every department, you know, speak to every line item if that's what you desire. You know, during our budget review process in August, Jocelyn, Aaron, and I sat down for days and went over every single line item in the entire city budget, and we made a lot of cuts. And so, you know, in an effort to try and bring a balanced budget in, you can go through that budget as a city council and say, oh, I don't think the city as a policy matter wants to do this anymore. You know, whether it be a particular service or a reduction in service. So that's what I would think you could do. We've talked about revenues too. I think it's a balancing act, and you need to talk about both.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, you're going to find that the people like the services that you provide.
Once again,
Yeah,
higher services, less tax.
exactly.
So I think we gotta find out what that balance is, and maybe try to craft a budget that, I'm sorry, I don't talk to you guys enough, that assumes we don't have CRA.
Is this a workshop?
Well, I think a
Whatever you
questionnaire
wanna
is,
do. I just wanna, I see we are very lean on reserves.
a questionnaire is a good place to start. And we can get that, we'll gather information. I'll list it on the next possible agenda to where we have several surveys. And then you can pick and choose whatever questions you want to ask, and we can implement it and get it done. And then you can hear. It's a great idea to do.
Well, just so we don't get to I remember the last minute, whatever you got till September 13th, whatever, we gotta sign something.
Yeah.
If we're ready, we'll be,
Yeah.
you look like you wanna say something.
No,
Okay.
I'm just leaning forward.
Anything over here? Anyway, the other thing that I would like to address real quickly, and I asked Joe to look it up, is this idea of our noise ordinance that's never worked, not applying or superseding the
WOD.
WOD. And, I mean, we're not only not enforcing the noise ordinance, we're not enforcing much of the parking, we're not enforcing a whole lot of events, and I don't dislike Gill Dogs. This isn't personal. But I think you're gonna let the tiger out of the box if we say, okay, our noise ordinance is fine, and Seaside, you can point it at Sand Pebble, then we'll get action. And, you know, Catches, you point at the south side, and, you know, I think you're just letting things become into a very uncomfortable way of life for the citizens. And frankly, police department's gonna have a tremendous amount more services necessary for all the drunks we're bringing to town. We're not getting the affluent drunks either.
You know, we had this whole noise thing. Now, I was the one that was fighting against everything. Basically, I was made a complete fool of about 100 people in this place. And, you know, and here we are again discussing it. And if I recall, I think you were in that audience, but,
No, I was not.
yeah, you were fighting for the bars at the time, and I was trying to fight for
When
the
was
city
I fighting?
residents.
No, you got me out mistaken.
Go
But
back there.
either way, I don't mind. I could have been fighting for bars. I like bars, but I don't like them spreading their idea of a music into the entire city. And Donnie Johnson may have a different idea of music, and we can have a clash of the titans. But,
Well, if I.
you know, if we were 20, Nancy, we would want all the bars we could get. But this community,
Even at 20, I didn't want to hear that when I could come out to my dock when I moved here 30 years ago and sit and listen to the beautiful quiet of the night.
thank you.
I
Mr.
don't
Mayor.
have that anymore, but I was told that they were here first and that I was not, so I'm like, okay, whatever.
I'd like to make, I'd like to make just a couple of comments. One is, when it comes to noise, there is probably very few municipalities that have dealt with the situation that have come away from it successfully.
That's true.
I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, and
10, 15 years
a lot of it has to do with the methodology, which is always based on decibel meters. It doesn't work, it never has, it's never gonna. That's just the way it is to it. But, and that's just, you know, if you wanted to go back at the noise ordinance, you know, all right, but
I
be
don't
ready
wanna
for a
go-
battle.
I want to enforce the
But-
WOD.
Right, but the secondarily, to speak to that, when you were talking about both parking and noise and such, I've always been of the opinion that city codes, the main reason you have residential and commercial districts,
Right.
and you have rules related to the commercial businesses, is to basically protect the residential districts from the commercial districts. Now, whether it's noise, or machinery sound, or pollution smelling smoke, it's of my opinion that most businesses, all businesses, should keep their business activity within the confines of their property. When their activity, whether it's parking in the streets or noise or whatever, leaves the confines of that property, to me, that's going against the whole concept of having codes in the first place.
And I'm absolutely with you. And that's why before the WOD, the jury constructed some special walls for Seaside to enclose the music. That didn't really work, but it helped. And I don't think we'll ever craft anything that will be 100%. But I think that the WOD is a very nice document. And it gives us, and there are some things, you know, coming, that don't necessarily have to be outside music. You know, I mean, you go to Universal Mall in Tampa, they have you go inside, you can't stand the music, but you go outside and you don't hear it. And I think that's the kind of direction I'd like to go in that. WOD is really to, yes, we can amend it, but watch out of opening Pandora's box.
Well, you know, my comment back then was, why are we allowing all this amplified music? Why can't we just have acoustical? You know, guitar and that kind of music, allowing music, but not like, you know, headbanging, you know, loud amplified music.
Well, Nancy, that's exactly what the WOD calls for. Non-amplified, no amplified, open-air bands. It's acoustical is allowed. So you must have been thinking along with
Well, I
that.
think that's kind of what I brought up during the time that we were doing it, and that's why it probably, well, no, WOD was before my time.
There was a lot of work put in it. I was just at the end of that. Terry, how you look?
So we don't know where we're at with the city codes versus the other. I mean, till you get back to us?
He's gonna.
Well, I'll have to take a look and see exactly what the language is in the waterfront overlay district and how it relates to other sections of the code if one supersedes the other.
Is there a procession of codes that I'm?
Well, no, I mean, it's our code. I would have to see what within that specific section, if it has specific language regarding noise, if there's anything, any references to other sections of the code. I'm just not prepared to speak on that at this point.
But I'm pretty sure there isn't. I read it recently. Well, I think we got a good
Good jumping off
We just need a
point.
discussion, we need to work together, have some spirit like we had today with Rocky. And I don't think it's an unsurpassable thing. It's just we need to know, you know, poor Richie hasn't, while the country was cutting and slashing and lowering salaries, we didn't do that. And I'm not saying we should. I just say we can't continue this city with using these funds. By the way, 5 CRA funds were closed last year. So what if they did that to us tomorrow, if we don't start now?
While you're speaking of that, Mayor, I got an email from this city stating that we should watch our comments on it. That's unethical.
We should watch one?
We should watch our comments about what we say about this because the county might hear us.
Well, you know what?
I find it
I've
unethical.
already talked to the county about it, so.
Well, I assure you, from being there, they're well aware of not only what we are doing with CRA, but what Newport Richey is doing, what Zephyr Hills is doing, and every other city in this county. So I don't like this cloak and dagger stuff I get over the emails. That we better watch out, be careful, don't talk about this. I've had enough of that. And then, again, tonight, we sit here and talk for an hour, and what progress have we made? Where are we going with this thing? Have we fixed the problem? No, we have not fixed the problem. We haven't even, we're gonna send a flyer out. That's very nice. We'll, you know, we'll find out where the citizens are, but I'll tell you, like Tom says, they're gonna want their services. But you have to look back at this city and see how we operated in the old days before CRA. And don't tell me it was all about the money because we had more people here. I don't want to hear that. I would really like to see Lupo come in here and sit down with the city manager and say, this is how I did it. This is how I spent money. These are the things that I did to raise money. I know one of the major factors that I was told from our previous city clerk was that our utility fund was making a lot of money in the old days. Today, we're spending $500,000 according to our budget, but I know we haven't spent it all. We may not spend it all. It's in the budget, folks. It may get spent if it's there, but why do we have $500,000 worth of money going out to Newport Richey? I just don't understand why we're not looking at the water department. It's frustrating. And I know this is what I'm getting in the street. people are sick and tired of this council just sitting here wagging their tongues and not coming to any kind of solutions. No forward movement. I understand and I appreciate their frustration. And to sit here, a lot of them were here tonight to hear this, but they didn't want to wait until the very end. It's unfortunate. I'd like to see some action. I'd like to see this council move forward. Let's start planning. We've been talking about this budget for how many years that this was coming. We're going to have to get with the program. CRA isn't going to be there forever. I've heard it until I could throw up. But somewhere down the line, you've got to start doing like you said, Doc. You look at your budget like everybody does in their home budget, and you decide what you can use, what you're able to function with, and what you're not going to be able to function with. And those are hard, fast facts that you're going to have to deal with. But let's get to it, because I think when we get to this next budget, it's going to be apparent that we're going to have to do something. And we can talk about it till we're blue in the face. I want to see some action, and the people in the street, our citizens, want to see some action. I also have a question about CRA monies for the paint-up, fix-up. Are we spending any monies out of the paint-up, fix-up?
Yes, it was your direction that we put money back in. I'm talking about the CRA. We did so. That money has been expended, and we are telling people at this point all the funding is gone. So we're no longer spending any money on paint-up, fix-up.
That's very interesting, being I remember this council saying that we needed to do something to make sure that those monies got to the people that needed it the most, and nothing was resolved, and now all the money is gone. Once again, a lot of talk, no action, and now the money's gone.
Well, so that means that people utilized it. Who utilized it? You have a list of people who came in and utilized it, don't you?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I said, it's obvious that the money's gone. There were people that utilized it.
Oh, yes, yeah.
But
In
Nancy, you were one of
2006
the driving
and-
forces that
and-
said this should go to people
This
that
is
really
last
need it.
year's.
And it,
No, that's
where
this
did it
year's.
go?
What do you mean? This-
And why did
This
that
fiscal
happen
year?
without this council's approval? Another thing I want to bring up,
We never approved who the money went to.
we never did, and we brought that up and said that that was something we needed to get back to, and it never got addressed.
Well, if I could clarify, it was part of the budget review process. During that process and during the public hearings, you directed us to put money back in the paint-up, fix-up. We did so. We put $35,000 in, and your direction last year and during the current fiscal year is to tell people that grant funding was no longer available when the line item was expended. So we've had a number of grants, I can't tell you how many, that expended the $35,000. If you want to revisit that, we can take money from other places possibly and fund more in the paint-up, fix-up grants, but I just would like to caution you, they're already spending reserves. And very frankly, I'm uncomfortable with giving away money out of reserves. So keeping that in mind, I'd just like to walk away tonight from the meeting with your direction. Number one, develop a questionnaire back for your approval. I'd like your direction to continue to wean ourselves off the CRA as much as possible. And whether or not, and you may need to give this some thought, but I'd like to see the city do a cost allocation study. For example, a big share of certain employees are paid for by the CRA. Do they really need to be paid for by the CRA, or should they be paid for by the general fund? Is the city manager's salary, administration salaries, there are no contributions currently from the utility fund, and there needs to be. I spend a lot of time on utilities. Jocelyn and Aaron does as well. There needs to be contributions from the utility fund. We need to look at those cost allocations. That's going to be relief on the CRA fund and place more of the expenditures in the utility fund where they belong. So, you know, if I have your direction on those matters, you know, I'm comfortable, and then, you know, we can, the other thing I'd like to know is which area you would like to discuss next.
I would say the elephant in the room is the police department.
Okay?
And I would be, of course, with council's consent, happy with the flyer, what?
Questionnaire.
Questionnaire.
Yeah.
I think that's something we ought to know, and we're working for the city. And the last thing will be tough on you, but what if you just brought us back a budget with the CRA, just taking 25% off the CRA, not shuffling it? What do you think isn't absolutely necessary? And I don't want to scare any employees, but, you know, we can't be 2,600 people and spend the amount of money we're spending. I mean, if you were 2,600 people and you didn't have the red light camera, you didn't have the CRA, you didn't have grants, you would have to have what, 20 mils?
I really wouldn't want to float a number in front of you, but,
I
you know,
gotta say,
the thing
something like-
is, you can cut, and that's at your discretion and as a policy matter. You know, you will, if you cut, and cut substantially, you will cut employees, and you will cut services.
Which brings me to my other thought is, and you guys, of course, I'm one vote. I would say the best way, I don't like to fire anybody. I think a freezing hire is the best way, and let attrition take care of some of the problems that we have with money. And, you know, I'd like to see a motion that we don't hire anybody until it comes to this council for approval.
No, we did that at during the last budget. We discussed that.
Well,
And,
Terry wants action, I'm with him.
Yeah, we talked about it, and then I think we even mentioned we talked about what employees were to be hired, and I think there was one, and that one was approved because I forget why, but anyway, but then I think at that point we were kind of like told that we wouldn't have any other employees hired. And I don't think there have been since the last budget, has there been? Okay, but no, I agree.
No, you've been operating basically with 26% less staff. And I find it crazy that you're the same people that kept the rollback rate. You never want to raise taxes. Look at yourself, okay? Look at yourself. Without all of these particulars that are tied in, a CRA with 3 mills, how much further have we moved up in 10 years from the 3.9% that was around in Dale's time? I voted to increase taxes. If I don't get voted in, I don't care. That's the right move to make. It was the right move to make then. We said it, that we would add revenues from services, and we've not done it. I've heard trash pickup, I've heard this and that. That's only going to get you what the communication tax does, 300 some odd thousand. That's not going to be enough. So now you're going to evaluate police department. If you can find out where the $900,000 in 10 years, great. If we can find something they're in. But these people provide good service. Okay, they all work hard, and that's what it takes to have this kind of a city. If you're going to keep making cuts and keep looking at that, you're not going to be a city anymore.
You can't have a city and make cuts.
No, I didn't say that. I said as long as you're going to keep these taxes artificially low and your sister city is almost closer to the 10% figure,
And almost close to
you
bankrupt.
feel that we can be a waterfront community that we are with both a very good police service, very good fire service, 26% less staff than noted before. The bargain can only run for so long.
That's why I think we have to look.
And
at
I
what
agree,
we
in
can
looking.
live on.
Yeah.
Steve, I mean, we're not really arguing about.
No, it's not an argument. I mean,
It's
everybody
a
up here sees
two-edged
it.
sword, and
Yeah.
I do have a problem thinking that we need 3 police vehicles at all times on the road. Back, and it used to be 2, and the argument was, you could do 1, but there was a safety
how much time we spent at Walmart. We talked about that,
Well,
and the
I'm gonna
police
bring
chief
that
knows.
up.
Police chief
I think that's
knows.
been
We got,
overstated.
and one thing not,
56%.
one thing not brought up tonight with Waterfront Park, what does it take from our public works, et cetera, to take care of a park? I think I said a long time ago, if we can't do anything with that park, is there a method to give it back?
Well,
Because
I
we
think-
got other parks in this city, and we certainly, I don't think, need that one.
I think we are
And I'll
the
just be on the record
city of
saying that.
parks, personally. But
We are a city
the
of
one
parks, and they're
on-
nice. But I mean, we got a park, we talked
the
about
one
bathrooms
on
tonight.
Miller's Bayou, I don't know, there's some people that use that. You can sell that park, take, code enforcement will load off them, load off Public Works. And, I don't think, some people are gonna hate me for that, but I didn't, not doing this job to be popular.
No, I don't think at all. We're all up
Don't
here
think I
because we
am.
love the city, and I know everybody does. But, in going forward, Terry indicated maybe these are the questions. Are we going to be spending some time in some workshops or doing things? There's a lot of work to do here.
I know that.
And it's not going to get done just meeting twice a month. And I know we get to $360, sir, but believe me, a lot more time is spent than a few hours, I can tell you that.
Do you want to schedule a work session on budget review for the police department?
Well,
Either
I mean,
that
I know
or-
Dale indicated the police, I would beg to differ to just say, you're gonna be examining a
Well,
lot of
we go
things.
through every one.
Sure.
The biggest expenditures there, that's the only reason.
Well, I mean, I would,
didn't pick them out.
I would suggest that, we could put one department as an agenda item on each regular
That's
council
what Tom and I
meeting,
talked
because,
Okay,
You know-
so rather than schedule a work session, on the next city council meeting, we put a department on for budget review like we did tonight?
I like tonight, but it does stretch out for the citizens. Maybe it'd be better to. Do a workshop. Do a workshop.
We can do it under a CRA meeting after each meeting.
yeah, but you see, these are not necessarily
The other-
CRA
yeah,
issues.
They wouldn't be CRA.
Okay, these are city council issues.
Yeah, that falls under the general fund.
Oh, well, then we
Yeah.
just have to have it in that, we'll put it at the end. If people want to leave, you can warn them ahead of time. It's going to be long.
Rather have workshops, rather have it here.
I rather have it during city council meetings. Again, Tom talked about doing an in-depth review amongst your first several suggestions of things that you were gonna do. So, I mean, you got some background work to get ready for us. And, yeah, take it one at a time, because otherwise we wind up with these meetings that are just bouncing around.
Well, I have a study was requested, and I know Mr. Schatzel's working on it. That will probably be
Which
ready.
study, Steve?
This is a complete analysis of the public safety budget.
But the one question, and you may want to take some time with this, but
Just a little
I'm
more.
certain that when the cost allocations were developed for the CRA, I've not seen any documents, maybe the ones that were here knew of, some analysis that was done to say, this person spends X amount of time in the CRA and spends, do you want to do an in-depth analysis on that? We probably would need consulting assistance to do that.
No, because we're going to spend more
I
money.
mean, we've
doing-
changed nothing. What's on there now
Yeah.
is as it was for many years. So we've gone with what was there. We haven't changed
I think we
anything.
should just look at each department to start off
Okay.
with, and let's see where we can cut money. And then, before we spend more money
Or
on some
just-
kind of analysis.
If you just get some ideas.
Yeah.
So the next
What-
council meeting, we'll put the police department budget review on?
Or
Yeah.
public,
That would
or
be the
public
most
works.
contentious, I can assure you. What I do want to discuss with this council is, I feel like we need a community police department, not a SWAT team, so to speak. And Tom and I have talked about this blackout windows, and I want to see the guy and say hello. That 2,600 people, 3 of them on they ought to know everybody in the city.
Well, none of the
Can't
new
even see
vehicles
them.
are being solar extra tinted, none of them. So
Well,
we've
yeah,
already started.
and
The
I
chief and I
think-
talked about
But it
that.
shouldn't be a sole thing, just that, hey, we're targeting the police, we're gonna get rid of
No,
them.
we're
That's
not
not,
targeting, no,
but-
we're not getting rid of.
It's public works too.
but I would also like to add, if there are other cities, anywhere, that have added an initial, people say, look, we want our police, keep it. We had an 86% was the last study done, that was several years back. People want it. Do they want to help pay for it? Okay, are there some other instruments in a taxation-wise or anything else that we've, hinted at that allow, whether we're talking about fire, police, any of that stuff? I'm just asking,
No, I'm
if we're gonna have
saying,
that
I am
conversation.
open to anything
Some
that
research.
makes, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe we need every cent plus more. We can't actually open a second CRA. You realize that?
No, you can't.
Right? It says it's so in the CRA thing. I spent hours
A lot
reading.
of ideas.
I don't know about that one either, Tom, but I think we all have an understanding of where we're going, what we want to accomplish, and that is lower taxes and more services.
That adds up.
If
Well,
only that
okay.
could be done by motion.
Taking your direction, we'll get you sample questionnaires, and we will put the police department budget review on the next council agenda.
I have one more thing, Mayor.
Sir?
There's Restore Act Fund money in the CRA budget that I've seen, so I don't think this question is
I
on the
didn't
line.
understand that either. Is that what you're gonna ask?
Pardon?
The Restore Act? and-
Yes. Well, it's just that we met, this council met and approved the Restore Act funds, and they are laid out in a certain format as to what we plan on doing with them. Now, if those were to change, I would think it would be this council that would want to change them, or at least start the process to change them, because we were told that we could amend them if we needed to.
I heard that. That was the other things that I was not happy with the minutes. But
Now, what?
I was not happy with the minutes as reflecting what we actually said.
Well,
As in, we could we could amend it.
I wanted to ask Tom, because in my route, when I go through my route every day for the county, I happen to hit the Parks and Recs Department, and one day I saw Tom and Mr. Priest in there talking to Mr. Franklin. So I asked Mr. Franklin what the nature of that meeting was. Would you like to share that with the public?
Yeah, it was just a discussion on the potential for additional funding from the Restore Act. And that's all it was. So we've taken no formal action. It was just a question and answer session, if you will. To clarify what you said earlier, were you speaking to the line item for Restore Act in the
Yes.
CRA budget? Okay, that's in there, but the revenue side of the ledger shows that being reimbursed by Restore Act. So that's not out-of-pocket city money, so.
But
Well,
let me
I'm-
ask one other, what on earth is Jim Priest doing in the middle of the Restore Act?
Well, I'll tell you, Mayor, what he was doing, because Mr. Franklin told me. They were trying to redirect those funds to buy a dredging machine. That was the nature of the
With
meeting.
his, cut.
And he said there was no way that could be done, so he said, I felt like Scrooge, but I guess it was during Christmas, as I recall. Unfortunately, it cannot be redirected like that. But I just find it funny that nobody came to this council and asked them, we'd like to think to try to do this. Let's see what we can do. We don't get input. Things are done with citizens, and this council is completely out of the loop. Had I not been on that route, I would not have known that occurred.
Well, just rest assured, nothing happened. The meeting was requested by Mr. Priest and granted by Mr. Franklin, and then he invited me as a courtesy. So I attended. I appreciate the fact that he did invite me as a courtesy, otherwise I wouldn't have known about it. And nothing happened, there were no commitments, there was just questions and answers, and that was it. Anything that involved any kind of commitment would need to come in front of the city council or CRA.
Is Mr. Priest selling dredging equipment?
I don't know.
Which brings up one last point, or maybe not last point. We still have a ramp on the river with a permit to Mr. Priest and Ms. Haynes was here this morning. It's permitted to him. I mean, I don't know if we need to take action, if it's a civil matter, if it's gonna have to include the city if she gets an attorney. You live over there, Bill, do you have a thought?
No, I've never been involved in that situation other than probably before the election. You and I spoke about it more than I've spoken with almost anybody about it. And,
Why don't we have Sherry?
what's that?
Why don't we have Sherry? She has nothing to do with
Don't
the
put her
building.
on.
It was a building official. I know that there was discussions with the building official, and the building official said that it was.
It's a civil matter.
It was,
It's a
yeah, well, it
civil
was a
matter.
civil matter as far as who can use it. As far as the permitting and the installation and all of that, according to the building official, that was all done properly. Now, I don't know what the arrangement is over there as to who gets to use it and who doesn't. Not me, I'm not on that street, so I don't
There's
know anything
29
about it.
people, there ought to be 29 feet. And I realize but I don't know how we leave that.
We're out of, of course, we're out of the realm of CRA at this point, but,
What's that?
I said, we're out of the realm of CRA at this point, but,
And, had we used our boards, this wouldn't have happened. If that would've gone through the Port Authority Board. it wouldn't
there's
happen.
nothing, although respectfully, there's nothing that requires it to go before the Port Authority Board.
It has to do with the water, it should.
Safety and the health of the waterways.
Safety, water, stormwater runoff, I mean, is it being constructed correctly? Is it being constructed on the correct line?
As far as I know, it was inspected. but,
Just to clarify, the building official determined that a permit by the city was not necessary because it was a slab on grade. And as far as I understand, the Army Corps and DEP permits were all secured, and so we would consider it a civil matter at this point. Additionally, I've never seen anybody use it. I go over there frequently just to ride through and check on things. I've never seen anybody even put a boat in there. So you can determine how much of an issue it really is, but
Yeah, really, the question from our standpoint, I think, is, can we be included in a lawsuit? And
I guess
my
anything's-
understanding of the law is, if you're in the room when the flash bulb goes off, you're in.
anything's possible, but I don't think that we have any liability or exposure on that. I'll defer to the city attorney.
No, I would agree. I believe that it is a civil matter between whichever property owners may be excluded from that and whatever arrangements they have based on their ownership interests. I don't see that the city has any significant liability, but then again, anybody can sue anybody for anything.
That's right. That's true.
On the same quick note, could we look ahead with the next meeting? You had spoke briefly about the project in general related to the Restore Act. The comments, I think everybody noted from the commissioner when he was here in relation to those dollars locked in. From that particular point, we have project costs that are associated with those particular phases. Initially, that first phase, whether we're talking about the preliminary engineering, permitting, development plans, construction observation, et cetera, those all have some figures tied to them. It was felt that we would spend X amount of money just, regarding dredging itself. In other words, can we have some updates at the next meeting and be prepared to talk about that more?
I will put that on the next
maybe just an
agenda if it's
update.
okay with the council.
Is it my understanding, I hope, that we're not gonna be spending engineering money for ramps that we don't want?
I certainly wouldn't do that without your approval. So no engineering task order authorization has been given. Any such order would require your approval.
There's obviously money in those specific cases that would be left. I know this might be a silly question for the council, but I'm really curious as in relation to that park, as we've said before, what goes into that for maintenance, use, et cetera. Is this just something that we're plain stuck with for decades and decades to come? Or is there action that can be taken if it's just going to be a park as the way it is now? I'd really like to know how much public works money and everything else we're spending over there.
Well,
I think that's an important step going forward, and I want some legal advice on that matter.
You guys commissioned a $100,000 drawing that is absolutely labor and care intensive with the boardwalks so no, I don't think, I think that from what I remember the old guys, and now I'm one, that was the buffer. That was the stopping point. Now, the thing we should do, and we should have done for years, is put the pier back for the kids to fish. That was one of the main draws. And other than that, whatever you want, except for boat ramps and, you know, violating the FCT.
Well, I don't know about the violation. We won't go there. We covered that enough, and you're sitting next to the attorney. But one thing I think we can talk about is you're going to go ahead and put a $180,000 ramp in there and leave the park as such, maybe make some adjustments to the restrooms. Is that what we want for the next 10 years? And we're gonna spend
ramp.
taxpayer dollars to take care of that park where, you know, it's basically a dog park? I can hear you. Okay, it's my turn. You can talk after if you want. Let's get an analysis done. Yeah, it's a little bit unnerving. You know, let's have something done. I mean, that just totals up the number of parks. If you don't want to do anything with it, then don't. But you want to put up a $180,000 pier over there? I'm not going to vote for it.
I'll vote for it, so we got.
You got
three
one.
negatives there.
Yeah, you got one. That
The
might
other
be all you
question I
get.
have is, since we're having
It's a
so many
joke.
problems and we're on the park, can we just lock those restrooms up and be done with it? Lock them up.
We should
If
lock
people
the whole
are
park up.
gonna keep abusing them, lock them up.
That's, really, that's the kind of thinking I think we have to get to. If we're just throwing money in holes.
You're saying you spent a lot of money to take care of that park. I'd like some facts and figures on that going forward. And maybe there's some other choices that can be made. Maybe there's some other choices can be made on the park going forward, or we just want to keep the decades going and keep it as such. Terry, maybe you got some ideas. Bring them to the next meeting.
Well, I thought Nancy had a idea. I don't know how much it costs.
I got
don't
some
know about
ideas.
Anything about it, but with the children.
Maybe a marina years ago.
Well, you know, the city
That
of,
was subtle.
well, the people don't want it. A lot of people don't want it, for one thing. We do have some, we're going in the right direction, but the last time we met, the committee basically said that they didn't feel as though the new people that got elected wanted to go in that direction. People that are on the bayou have told me that they don't want it there, and so I'm not sure.
What would it, how would it serve?
Well, there'll be kids running in the water all the time if we have a splash park, and but it took us a long time. It took us almost a year to finally find a way to get money for that splash park, and so now we have a GoFundMe page, and we have a 501c3 that allows us to take donations for this park. It would be nothing that would be charged for the city residents, or to the city residents, or taken from taxes, because I knew better than doing that. So I just wanted to see if we could get donations. But the committee kind of decided to just hold off for now, because they didn't feel as though they had the blessing to go forward. They felt as though we would get poo-hooed.
What were the objections of people on the bayou?
Just the noise and, you know, kids and, you know, when you bring kids into a park, it'll cause noise and, you know, they'll be yelling and,
Well, if they're putting up with Gildos, I don't see how they can't handle a few kids. It is time, I think, unless anybody has a
I would only add to that is you bring kids in a neighborhood, they bring noise too. Wherever there's kids, there's gonna be noise. That's
but that was
part
kind
of
of what I
life.
was hearing, you know,
I'm just
there'll be
saying.
if there's children there, they'll be running through and, you know, screaming and playing and,
I don't think it's
you know.
gonna have
That
much of a
waterfront's
problem.
about to get a whole
But-
lot busier.
but anyway.
And these folks know it out here too.
two whole lot.
It's
Yeah.
about to get a whole lot busier.
Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
That is not discussable.
It's non-debatable.
All in favor?
Aye.